Thousands of Tesla Cybertrucks have been recalled in the U.S. due to concerns about part of the electric car's trim falling off in the model's eighth and largest ever recall. The issue affects more than 46,000 trucks made starting in November 2023, which analysts say amounts to nearly all Cybertrucks. It comes as Tesla, which did not respond to a request for comment, grapples with falling sales amid a backlash against the firm and its boss Elon Musk. On Thursday, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi said 3 unnamed people would face charges for setting fire to Tesla cars and charging stations, accusing them of domestic terrorism. Tesla does not break out sales of the Cybertruck, but car tech firm Cox Automotive has estimated roughly 39,000 were sold in the U.S. last year. Prior Cybertruck recalls involved failing windshield wipers, trapped accelerator pedals, possible loss of drive power to the wheels, and other issues. Tesla started investigating the latest issue, involving a piece formerly known as the Cant Rail, in January, according to filings with the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration (NHTSA). The Cant Rail, a stainless steel exterior trim panel, can delaminate and detach from the vehicle, the notice said. A detached panel can become a road hazard, increasing the risk of a crash. Tesla told NHTSA it had received about 150 claims from drivers about the issue, but was not aware of any accidents caused by the problem. It estimated that the issue affected about 1% of vehicles involved in the recall. The issue is covered under a warranty for new owners, and the company will replace the piece free of charge. Tesla's shares have dropped nearly 40% since January, erasing the jump in value that it enjoyed after the 2024 U.S. election. The fall has been significantly more than the overall drop in the U.S. stock market over that period. Dan Ives, an analyst who has historically been very pro-Tesla, said on Thursday the firm was facing a tornado crisis moment due to brand damage from Musk's political role. The political backlash adds to the challenges the company had already been facing from increased competition and an aging lineup of offerings. The Cybertruck was supposed to help reignite buzz around the brand and help it break into the lucrative market for pickup trucks in the U.S. It hit the roads in late 2023 and carries a starting cost of more than $72,000, £55,500. The family of a Boeing whistleblower, who took his own life last year, has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the company. The complaint alleges that John Barnett was subjected to a campaign of harassment, abuse, and humiliation after he raised concerns about safety issues. It claims that the conduct of the company was the clear, foreseeable cause of Mr. Barnett's death. Boeing said it was saddened by Mr. Barnett's death and extended its condolences to his family. The former Boeing manager was found dead from what police described as a self-inflicted gunshot wound in the car park of a Charleston hotel on March 9th last year. The 146-page lawsuit has been brought by his mother, Vicky Stokes, and his brothers Rodney and Michael on behalf of his estate. It was filed on Wednesday in the U.S. District Court of South Carolina. It attributes his death to Boeing's actions, including what it describes as a retaliatory campaign by his managers that amounted to a hostile work environment. Whether or not Boeing intended to drive John to death or merely destroy his ability to function, it was absolutely foreseeable that Boeing's conduct would result in PTSD and John's unbearable depression. Boeing's conduct was the clear cause and the clear foreseeable cause of John's death, it says. It describes Mr. Barnett as a dedicated, idealistic worker who took his role seriously in protecting the flying public and believed that he had a personal, legal, and moral obligation to ensure that every possible defect was identified, documented, and remedied. It describes how he was allegedly harassed, denigrated, humiliated, and treated with scorn and contempt, as well as being removed from investigations he was working on and blacklisted from transferring to other quality control positions within the company. Mr. Barnett took early retirement from Boeing in March 2017, at a time when the claim says he had been suffering from symptoms of depression and severe anxiety and knew he was going to be fired. The lawsuit alleges the company continued to put pressure on him, for example by preventing friends who continued to work there from having any contact with him. Among the exhibits put forward in support of the claim are an email in which he says, "Boeing has completely destroyed my outlook on life," and his handwritten final note which says, "I can't do this any longer. Enough." John Barnett worked for Boeing for 32 years. From 2010, he was employed as a quality manager at Boeing's factory in North Charleston, South Carolina. The facility builds the 787 Dreamliner, a state-of-the-art airliner used mainly on long-haul routes. During his time at the factory, Mr. Barnett raised a number of concerns with management about violations of safety procedures, as well as about defects in aircraft on the production line. He later took his concerns to the media. In 2019, he told the BBC that under-pressure workers had been deliberately fitting substandard parts to aircraft on the production line. Workers had failed to follow procedures intended to track components through the factory, allowing defective components to go missing. He had uncovered serious problems with oxygen systems on the 787, which could mean 1 in 4 breathing masks would not work in an emergency. Boeing denied his assertions. However, a 2017 review by the U.S. regulator, the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, did uphold some of Mr. Barnett's concerns. It established that the location of at least 53 non-conforming parts in the factory was unknown, and that they were considered lost. Boeing was ordered to take remedial action. On the oxygen cylinders issue, the company said that in 2017 it had identified some oxygen bottles received from the supplier that were not deploying properly. But it denied that any of them were actually fitted on aircraft. Safety standards at Boeing have come under a harsh spotlight since an incident last year in which a disused door panel fell off a brand new 737 MAX aircraft shortly after takeoff. The incident, which came 5 years after 2 previous catastrophic accidents involving the 737 MAX, brought intense scrutiny of the company's quality control procedures and conditions in the factory. The company appointed a new chief executive last year, industry veteran Kelly Ortberg, and has produced a detailed action plan to address concerns raised by regulators about issues on the factory floor. In response to the lawsuit being filed, Boeing issued a brief statement. "We are saddened by John Barnett's death and extend our condolences to his family," it said. Previously, however, the company has pushed back against the allegations made against it, telling the BBC. Boeing reviewed and addressed quality issues that Mr. Barnett raised before he retired in 2017, as well as other quality issues referred to in the complaint. Engineering analysis determined the issues he raised did not affect airplane safety. It also drew attention to a decision made earlier in Mr. Barnett's case, in 2020, in which the U.S. Occupational Safety and Health Administration concluded the company had not breached whistleblower protection law. It added, "We appreciate employees who raise their voice, and we have systems in place to encourage them to speak up confidentially or anonymously."
When you see pasta, your brain probably doesn't jump to the secrets of the universe. But for almost a century, physicists have puzzled over spaghetti's counterintuitive properties. You might think physicists only ask the big questions. We mostly hear about the physics of the cosmic and the minuscule, the shape of our universe, and the nature of the particles that fill it. But physicists, of course, have ordinary lives outside of a laboratory, and sometimes their way of questioning the universe spills over to their daily habits. There's one everyday item that seems to especially obsess them: spaghetti. Going back at least a century, spaghetti has been the subject of rigorous studies. Through this research, physicists continue to learn new things about the solid state of matter, the chemistry of food, and even draw connections to the origin of life. The steady torrent of spaghetti science helps to demonstrate that deep questions lurk in our ordinary routines, and that there are plenty of hungry physicists who can't stop asking them. For example, how thin can spaghetti get? The typical spaghetto, the word for an individual strand of spaghetti, is between 1 and 2 mm thick, 0.04 to 0.08 inches. But other long noodles vary widely in diameter, from udon at 4 mm, 0.16 inches, to angel hair at 0.8 mm, 0.03 inches. The thinnest handmade strands are called su-filindu, coming in at 0.4 mm, 0.02 inches, so slender that only a few women in Nuoro, Italy know how to make them. But recently, a team of researchers at the University College London wondered if 21st century lab equipment could do better. They used a technique called electrospinning. First, they dissolved flour into a special, electrically charged solution in a syringe. Then they held the syringe over a special, negatively charged plate. This pulls the solution through the dispenser needle down towards the collector plate in a very stringy noodle-type shape, says Beatrice Britton, lead author of the study. When the solution dried, the researchers were left with a crisscrossing thread of incredibly thin spaghetti. To the naked eye, all you see is a sort of lasagna sheet, Britton says, but a powerful microscope reveals a mat made of strands as thin as 0.1 millimeters, 0.004 inches. These noodles are also much stiffer than regular spaghetti. Britton and her colleagues hope their research can be a step towards biodegradable alternatives to plastic nanofibers, which are now used to filter liquids and treat wounds. A messy science. The world's thinnest spaghetti is just one recent example of how physicists can't seem to stop plying their tools on everybody's favorite carb. But physicists using their noodle on their noodles is no new thing. In 1949, Brown University physicist George F. Carrier posed the spaghetti problem in the American Mathematical Monthly, which he deemed to be of considerable popular and academic interest. Essentially, the problem amounts to, why can't I slurp up a strand of spaghetti without getting sauce on my face? His equations showed how the exposed strand swings about more wildly as it gets shorter and shorter, guaranteeing an eventual slap of the noodle against the slurper's lip and the fateful sauce eruption Carrier so deplored. Sadly, his mathematical formulas offered no way around the face slap. It's as deeply etched in the laws of the universe as the Big Bang. Later, two scientists inverted Carrier's pioneering study, exploring what happens when a stringy object slips out of a hole instead of being sucked in. They called their version the reverse spaghetti problem, familiar to any impatient eater who's had to spit out burning pasta because they hadn't waited for it to cool. For now, no theoretical physicist has attempted the more complicated problem of two dogs slurping from either end of the same spaghetti strand. The great mid-century American physicist Richard Feynman helped unlock the riddles of quantum mechanics, explaining how the elementary particles that make up atoms interact with one another. But Feynman's enormous contribution to spaghetti physics is less widely known. One night, Feynman wondered why it's almost impossible to break a stick of spaghetti into two pieces instead of three. He and a colleague spent the rest of the evening snapping spaghetti sticks until they covered the kitchen floor. Feynman's interrogation into the counterintuitive physics of dry spaghetti sparked a quarter-century of attempts to explain it. This finally happened in 2005 when two French researchers showed that spaghetti always breaks into two pieces at first. But after the fracture, as the two bent pieces snap straight again, all their pent-up strain gets released in a shockwave, causing further splintering. In 2018, a team of MIT scientists figured out how to stifle the shockwave, delicately twist the spaghetti strand before snapping it. Their method required lab equipment, but it reliably produced a perfect pair of fragments. Their work provided a new and deeper understanding of brittle rods that goes beyond spaghetti. The phenomenon of three-way fracturing is well known to pole vaulters, for example. My Italian-American mother taught me to break a bundle of dry spaghetti in half before putting it in boiling water so it fits horizontally in the pot. I guess Feynman did the same, but it's an outrage to many of the world's spaghetti eaters. If you're in the latter camp, then you place your dried spaghetti bundle upright in the pot of boiling water, then watch it slowly soften, buckle, and submerge itself. This familiar spaghetti behavior may not seem like a puzzle, but try removing a recently curled piece of spaghetti from the pot and letting it dry. It will stay curved rather than returning to its original straight length. Something in those first few minutes irreversibly changes the composition of the spaghetti. In 2020, two physicists finally explained this spaghetti transmutation. It's due to a feature called viscoelasticity, a name for the unique way materials like spaghetti respond to physical stress. This special property allows water to flow through the strand's outer layers. The strange mechanics of cooked spaghetti go even further. In one study, scientists dropped strands on the ground and measured how they coiled to learn about other elastic materials, from rope to DNA strands. In another, physicists tied spaghetti into knots and studied what types of strain would cause them to tear. Spaghetti physics even goes beyond the pasta itself. Sauce is loaded with its own scientific mysteries. When 8 Italian physicists met while doing research abroad in Germany, they found a shared frustration in the classic Roman dish K.L.P. The sauce requires very few ingredients. It's basically a mixture of reserved pasta water and grated pecorino cheese, but they'd all experienced its mystifying fickleness. Often the cheese irreversibly clumps up, ruining the sauce. This is especially common when you cook it in large batches, which made the physicists hesitant to invite their German colleagues to dinner. "We can't mess up K.L.P. in front of German people," says Ivan Dieterlizzi, who studies statistical and biological physics at the Max Planck Institute for the Physics of Complex Systems in Dresden, Germany. Fortunately, among them were some of the world's foremost experts on the physics of phase separation, exactly the kind of congealing phenomenon that plagued their group dinners. Arguing about the phase separation of K.L.P, they realized it was flummoxing from a scientific perspective as well. This is actually a very interesting problem, says Daniel Maria Biziello, co-author on the Casio study. So we decided to design an experimental apparatus to actually test all these things. The apparatus consisted of a bath of water heated to a low temperature, a kitchen thermometer, a petri dish, and an iPhone camera attached to an empty box. They invited as many hungry friends as they could find at Dieterlizzi's apartment and hunkered down to cook a weekend's worth of K.L.P. They found that the simple sauce was enormously complex. Chemically, it's a water-based solution with only a few components: starch from the pasta water, lipids from the cheese, and 2 kinds of protein, also from the cheese. Using their apparatus, they found a physical explanation for the sauce-wrecking clumps, which they termed the mozzarella phase. Proteins, unlike most molecules, get stickier when they're hot. As the sauce is heated, the researchers found this leads to these proteins sticking to the lipids and forming mozzarella-like clumps. In a well-made K.L.P, what prevents this is the starch, which forms a protective coat around the lipid molecules so they can't stick to the proteins. If the sauce gets too hot, the increased stickiness of the proteins overcomes this barrier. Once they understood the science behind the sauce, it was clear how to fix it. If you add enough starch above a certain threshold, you don't get this kind of separated state, says Dieterlizzi. Pasta water doesn't typically contain enough starch to guarantee this threshold, so they suggest adding a mixture of corn starch dissolved in water. The physics they use connects the clumping of K.L.P to ideas about the origin of life on Earth. Biophysicists use phase separation to understand how droplets of liquid can congeal and divide within a solution. A droplet dividing pretty much looks like a protocell, says Giacomo Bartolucci, another co-author on the study. Inside the little blobs that preceded actual cells, some believe the building blocks of life may have come together via a process much like the Italian's mozzarella phase. The same ideas are helping biologists understand how the plaques that cause Alzheimer's coalesce in the brain. Why is spaghetti such a locus of speculation and study for physicists? For one, it's simple: flour, water, and heat, says Vishal Patil, one of the discoverers of the twist-and-break method, who is now a professor of mathematics at the University of California, San Diego. The fact that a combination of so few components raises so many deep questions speaks to how physics underlies everything they see and do, Patil says. It also shows that no matter how deep physicists probe the big and the small, the answers can still fall short of explaining phenomena we see every day. When it comes to K.L.P, all the tools of theoretical physics can only tell us what every Italian grandmother knows: keep the stove burning low when you make it. Laboratory electrospinning can only achieve marginally thinner spaghetti than what the women of Nuoro, Italy, make daily by hand. Spaghetti is just a very accessible thing you can play with, Patil says. The low cost of flour-based noodles is what made them a democratic delicacy for so many cultures around the world. Spaghetti was popularized in Naples as street food. That's why Feynman didn't hesitate to snap pounds of the stuff onto his kitchen floor. After a long day at the blackboard, plugging away at the impenetrable math of quantum mechanics or black holes, the mechanical wonders of spaghetti are the perfect fodder for scientists' mealtime probing.
A Hollywood director has been arrested and accused of using studio funds intended to complete a sci-fi series to buy luxury cars, cryptocurrency, and fancy betting for himself. Carl Eric Rinch, 47, is charged with federal fraud and money laundering related to $11 million, 8.5 million pounds. He was given by Netflix to create a series called White Horse. Mr. Rinch, who is best known for the 2013 film 47 Ronin, declined to enter a plea when appearing in a Los Angeles court on Tuesday. The indictment does not name Netflix, referring to a subscription video-on-demand streaming service. But Mr. Rinch's long-running dispute with Netflix over the failed series has been previously publicized in U.S. media reports. Netflix has declined to comment on his arrest. Between 2018 to 2019, the streaming giant gave Mr. Wrench an initial budget of $44 million to film the show, which depicts artificial human clones, but he allegedly never completed a single episode. In March 2020, Netflix sent him another $11 million after he argued that the initial budget was not sufficient, according to prosecutors. But instead of using the funds for the series, he allegedly transferred them to his personal bank accounts and used it to invest in several risky financial ventures, the U.S. Justice Department said. Carl Eric Wrench orchestrated a scheme to steal millions by soliciting a large investment from a video streaming service, claiming that money would be used to finance a television show that he was creating. Prosecutor Matthew Podolsky said in a statement on Tuesday, but that was fiction. Only 2 months after receiving the $11 million, about half of it had already been spent, the indictment says. While he was in the process of losing the money, Mr. Wrench allegedly informed Netflix that the show was awesome and moving forward really well, according to the indictment. He allegedly used the remaining funds to speculate on cryptocurrency and on personal expenses and luxury items for himself, including a fleet of Rolls-Royces and a Ferrari, court documents state. The spending spree also included $1.8 million for credit card bills, $3.7 million on furniture and antiques, and $933,000 on mattresses and luxury bedding, the Justice Department states. The indictment also alleges that $1 million of the cash was sent to lawyers to sue Netflix in hopes of receiving more funds, and for a divorce. A profile of the dispute published by the New York Times in 2023 reported that friends and colleagues had described Mr. Wrench of growing increasingly erratic shortly after he signed the Netflix deal. The newspaper reports that he believed he could predict lightning strikes and volcanic eruptions and knew about a secret transmission mechanism for COVID-19. According to the Associated Press, Mr. Wrench made an initial court appearance on Tuesday. When asked by the judge whether he had read the 12-page indictment, he reportedly responded, "Not cover to cover." He was released on a $100,000 bail, and he is expected to attend trial in New York at a later date. If found guilty, he faces 20 years in prison. There are many lessons which can be learned from a popular Netflix series, a Guernsey police officer said. Digital Safety Development Officer Laura Simpson said the program Adolescence shone a light on how the so-called manosphere, male rage, and misogynistic influences online could affect boys and young men's mental health. The show, starring Stephen Graham, follows the family of a 13-year-old schoolboy who is arrested for killing a female classmate and explores the impact of social media and misogynist influencers on some boys. Ms. Simpson said the series should act as a wake-up call to parents, carers, and professionals who work with children. She said people should not bury their heads in the sand when it came to the online lives of children and what influenced them. Ms. Simpson said, "I think my key takeaway from the series was a moment in the last episode when the parents looked at each other and asked, 'Should we have done more?' That acknowledgement that they were not involved enough in aspects of their son's life which had ultimately led to tragedy should be a wake-up call to everyone who is a parent, carer, or professional who works with kids of any age." She said her advice to parents was to talk to their children about their online lives, be active users of apps and games played by them, and use parental controls on the internet. Ms. Simpson also said parents and children should share videos and content with each other they think is interesting, along with sharing information and ideas with other key people in a child's life, including teachers and relatives. An actor who appears in the Netflix series Adolescence has praised his grafter dad for being his biggest role model. Lewis Pemberton plays the role of Tommy, an outcast, whose 13-year-old friend Jamie is arrested for stabbing a teenage girl from his school. The 4-part drama has been praised for shining a light on the corrosive impact of social media and misogynist influencers on some teenage boys, and was highlighted by Sir Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's Questions on Wednesday. Mr. Pemberton from Beverly said his dad had always taught him, "If you want something, you can do it. You just have to work hard for it." The series stars Stephen Graham, who co-wrote the drama, after seeing 2 separate reports of boys stabbing girls to death. "I just thought, what's going on in society where this kind of thing is becoming a regular occurrence?" he told BBC's The One Show. Mr. Pemberton said his character was completely different to himself, quite nerdy and hard to play. But Graham, who he described as his idol, gave him tips. He told BBC Radio Humberside, "My dad, he's a grafter. I don't know if he's ever missed a day off work. He's always at work, and he loves his job. I look up to him in all different ways. The way he speaks, he just gets his point across in everything that he does." Mr. Pemberton said his dad had taught him, "The world's my oyster, and I've just got to do everything I can and do it 100%. Starmer said there was a need to tackle the emerging and growing problem raised by adolescents. He said the violence carried out by young men influenced by what they see online was abhorrent, and we have to tackle it.